Welcome to Your Mac Life for June 1st, the first June in Wednesday. The first June in Wednesday. Nice. Nice. The first Wednesday in June. This is show number 1094. I'm your goofball host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me tonight. Appreciate you guys being tuned in, whether you're tuned into the archive or with all the cool kids in the live show. We got two chat rooms going on. We have the IRC chat room, thanks to our good friend Monty. If you're not in either one, go to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com. Right there below the video, you can see a link to, you can see a box for IRC. Easy to get into. Just type in a password there, and it drops you right into our IRC chat room. Or you can join our Telegram chat room, which is also IRC-like chat, but Telegram is a little more full-featured. It's also open 24 hours a day. So if you want to join us anytime, if you're an archive listener and want to chat, you can join. A bunch of us are there all the time. I'm there constantly, whether I want to or not. On tonight's show, as always, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. And talk to Jim about this whole Peter Thiel Gawker story. It's not a Mac story per se. It's more of a press story, a freedom story, freedom of speech story, a money story. It's interesting from a bunch of different viewpoints. And we'll get Jim's thoughts on that as well as yours. So you can always send me emails to on-air at yourmaclifeshow.com anytime you'd like during the show or during the week, or to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. You send me an email with your thoughts on Gawker and whether what Peter Thiel is doing, has done, is, do you agree with it? Let me know. We're also going to talk about WWDC, which is coming up in a little under 2 weeks, about what we might see at WWDC. We're also going to talk a little bit about Amazon. Amazon is Jeff Bezos explained why you can't get his services, Amazon's video services, on the Apple TV. Talk about his justifications for that, along with whatever other things popped into our heads when we're talking to Jim. On the starting point of photography segment, we're going to talk about the perfect settings for every photograph. We're going to talk about how to set your camera up to get perfect settings every single time, bar none. How do you do that? It was a question someone said. How do you do that? And I'll answer the question. It'll be great. It'll be interesting. It'll be fascinating. It'll be all those things and so much more. As always, we encourage you to go to yourmaclifeshow.com if you'd like. If you're shopping on Amazon in particular, you can go to our show website first, click on one of our Amazon links on the left-hand side there. And even if you don't buy that thing, if you buy anything from Amazon during that session, we get a bit of a kickback. So we'd appreciate if you would surf Amazon through yourmaclifeshow.com first. And also you can subscribe to Your Mac Life for $2, $5, $10, $15 a month, whatever it might be, using your major credit card, not PayPal. You can use your credit card to do this. You don't got to use PayPal. PayPal is the mechanism, but you don't have to have a PayPal account to do it. So all you do is click on the little drop-down link, tell the drop-down link how much money you want to subscribe to per month. PayPal sends me that money monthly, and we put your name into the hat for our infrequent draws of products. And it also pays for stuff, too. It pays for bandwidth and lights and computer gear and motorcycle stuff and stuff. Did you guys... I keep thinking that I want to start another podcast. I keep doing this one. But another podcast I'm thinking about starting called Did You Hear or Did You See? The name of the podcast. I got the idea from this utterly idiotic story from The Verge. I taught Paul how to use a selfie stick. I don't know who Paul is. I don't know who I is. I don't know who either people are in this video. But how do you need to be taught how to use a selfie stick? Okay? How are you so incapable of getting through life without being able to figure out on your own how to use a selfie stick? And by the way, not knowing how to use a selfie stick is probably a good thing. You don't need a selfie stick. Okay? No one needs a selfie stick. They're annoying. They're what I call wands of narcissism. Because all they really are. I'm a photographer. I get wanting pictures of yourself in places, in front of the Eiffel Tower, at the Grand Canyon. I get that. But so many selfies that we see nowadays they're not of important things. They're not even of interesting things. They're just pictures of you. No offense, but no one cares. The vast majority of people who take selfies and post them wherever, I promise you, only your mom cares. For 99.9% of you. Only your mom gives a rat's ass. And even your mom's getting tired of them. I just thought that was just a hilarious story. This guy needs to be taught how to use a selfie stick. The story I saw that in my heading of, have you guys seen this? Google has patented what sounds like a bad idea, a sticky car hood that traps pedestrians like flies. Now, the point of the sticky car hood makes a little bit of sense, because the problem is in car versus pedestrian accidents, when the car hits the pedestrian with the front of the car, pedestrian hits the hood of the car and then falls off. And quite often, not quite often, but in a certain percentage of the time, gets run over by other vehicles, or even by the car that originally hit them. So the idea is that when you get hit by the car, instead of sliding off it, you stick to it. Now, there's all kinds of reasons why I think this is a bad idea. And not the least, why won't this video come on? Come on up. Here it is. So there's the Gawker patent. Now, Sherry says, I can imagine the birds are going to get stuck to my hood while I'm working. That's the thing. How does it prevent other things from sticking to the hood of your car? Bird poop, birds, bugs, hands, garbage, moose, as Scott Thrift says in the Telegram room. It doesn't make any sense. I think this is an example of one of those patents that will never actually go anywhere. You patent it because it's an idea and a concept. And so you patent it in order to protect it from other people. But I think it's just an awful idea. And hopefully it'll be an idea that will never actually get used. Ideally, what we want to see is autonomous vehicles won't hit people. When do you think autonomous vehicles will be the majority on the road? Self-driving cars. Like truly self-driving cars. Not cars that you put into self-driving mode, like the Tesla. When do you think we're going to see the majority of vehicles on the road be autonomous vehicles? I'm saying 20 years. I can't see it happening in the developed world. Let's say Europe and Canada, United States, first world countries, basically. I can't see it happening for 20 years, just if for no other reason than governmental regulations. And pushback. There's going to be a certain amount of pushback from the driving public who are going to say, no, you're not taking my car. I think there's going to have to be an entire generational change of attitude before the majority of us are willing to give up our cars. MacMan says, I can't see it happening ever. Interesting. Monty says, how about we patent smarter people who don't get in the path of moving cars? But I think it's going to be a very, very long time. I don't think it's around the corner like so many people think. And the thing is, the people who think this are generally those who are involved in the industry and want this to happen sooner. But I think the general public aren't going to be comfortable with autonomous vehicles for quite some time. For a very, very long time. Monty talking about patenting smarter people. I think one of the ways we patent smarter people is by getting rid of the dumb ones. Now, maybe our friend Scott Thrift in Australia can explain this if this is correct. Australia puts traffic lights in the ground to alert phone addicts. What? What? Here's something that will alert phone addicts. The sound of a horn honking as you walk into traffic. That'll get your attention, won't it? As folks in the chat rooms are saying, the Darwin Awards. Yeah, I don't have much of a problem with Darwin taking people out who walk down the street with their phone in their hands. That's bad enough. Okay? If I'm walking on the street and you're walking towards me with your phone and you're looking at your phone, I will not get out of your way. You're going to bump into me. Okay? And generally, I'm bigger than you are, so you're going to fall down. So that's one problem. But if you are still doing that, looking down at your phone as you cross the street, guess what? Zero sympathy for you if your dumbass gets run over. Why should we have to go to the expense of ripping up street corners to put traffic lights in the ground? We have perfectly good traffic lights up in the sky where your eyes should be. Wayne says, what's their solution for drivers and their damn phone? Well, we've already got solutions for that. We've got the police, hopefully in theory, penalizing those folks. There was a story, I don't know if you saw it this week or last week, police here in British Columbia are using spotter scopes to nab people texting or using their phone in their cars. And they're spotting folks from a kilometer away. Because here in British Columbia, it's not just illegal to use your phone while you're driving. It's illegal to use your phone when you're in the car. In other words, if you stop at a stoplight, you still can't use your phone. It's not like you can stop at a stoplight and then pick your phone up and read some text, put it down, and keep driving. No. That's still illegal. So police are doing that here. MacMan says, I nearly pissed myself laughing a few days ago when out walking and an idiot walked into a pole while looking at their phone. Yeah, hopefully they broke something serious, including their phone, that would make them go, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should either stop and do my texting or put the frickin' phone away. But like I said, if you're walking the street in the same path that I'm going, I will not verve to get in front of you, but I will also not verve to get away from you either. You will bump into me, and it will hurt you. Dave D says, MacMan, hell, I can do that without a phone. Exactly. It's not that hard to walk into telephone poles. It's actually fairly easy, speaking from vast experience. Folks, later on the show, we're going to talk in our starting point photography segment about how to get the perfect exposure, the perfect settings for every single picture. Someone asked me that question, and I will give you the answer later on. But up next, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about WWDC and Gawker and Amazon and a bunch of other stuff. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening. In our phone now, we've got our good friend Jim Downpour at The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Shawn. How are you?
I'm good. You sound like you're in a bar.
I am in a bar.
That's a good place for you to be. Good. You're watching the hockey game, I assume?
It is. I am.
All right. Don't tell me any scores. No hockey scores. I'm taping the game.
Okay.
All right. But who are you cheering for?
San Jose.
San Jose. Why?
Oh, yeah. San Jose.
You can't cheer for San Jose.
Yeah.
No, dude. Ice doesn't occur naturally in San Jose.
I know.
God
I know.
damn it. You got to cheer for Pittsburgh.
But they have Joe Thornton, and Thornton used to be a Bruin, and, we screwed up by trading him, so...
Yeah, but Sidney Crosby's from Halifax.
Yeah.
If that's the logic you want to use, if you want to use that kind of hometown logic, you got to cheer for the guy from the same place that you are.
I can use whatever logic I want.
Fair enough. It's not the series I wanted to see. I definitely didn't want to see San Jose in there because, like I said, ice doesn't occur naturally. I don't think any team should be allowed in places where ice doesn't happen.
Hey, if they have the technology to make ice happen, then that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think it should occur naturally. That's why I think there should be a team in Quebec City and not in Phoenix.
Yeah, well, Quebec City had their chance.
Yeah, they did. Let's talk a little bit about this really weird Gawker story from last week. Facebook billionaire PayPal founder Peter Thiel apparently got his knickers in a knot, and understandably so, and has been behind the scenes supporting a bunch of lawsuits against Gawker. What are your thoughts about this story?
There's going to be somebody to pay for the lawsuits no matter what it is.
Yeah.
So if that's what he wants to do, it doesn't appear that he was representing Facebook, but Facebook seems to be, distancing themselves a long way away from him. So
yeah, but he's still on the board of directors.
He's still, yeah. I don't know. To be perfectly honest, I don't know if I really care.
I think that's part of the problem too. Is the victim in this case, if you can describe them that, is Gawker, which is a website, a publication, a journalism, shall we say, and we shouldn't, that everyone it seems to hate because of the way they practice journalism. It's sleazy. It's just it feels dirty. So it's tough to try to defend Gawker on this one. But it also feels kind of the way Thiel is doing this. He's not suing Gawker on his own behalf. He's suing them through the back door, so to speak. And I think that's part of the problem that a lot of folks have with this story.
Well, he's not really suing them. He's just supporting the lawsuits financially.
Yeah.
Maybe some of these people in these lawsuits could go on their own, but who am I to say what a billionaire should spend his money on?
He's also not suing them in order to win. He's suing them simply to bleed them dry. He doesn't care whether they win or not.
And he's got the money to do
exactly,
it. So.
And that's part of the problem. I think that's part of the issue, is that he doesn't care whether he wins or loses these lawsuits. He knows that for the most part, fighting these lawsuits is going to cost the company that's being taken to court so much money they'll have to shut down. Because if all he wanted to do was to shut down Gawker, he could simply have bought them for the $10 million.
Well,
but
yeah.
If he had bought them, then Nick Denton and other people at Gawker would have made money. They would have gotten rich off of this. So he's not going to do it that way. So he's trying to shut them down through this, in my opinion, this sleazy kind of tactic of bleeding them dry.
So I was just going to say, do you think that's wrong? Obviously you do.
Yeah, I do. I understand why Thiel is doing it. For those folks who don't know the backstory, back in 2007, Gawker outed Thiel as gay. He was open to his friends, but he wasn't open to the world, so to speak. And he has the right to keep his sexuality to himself or to his close friends. So I have no problem with that. And certainly Gawker was sleazy in the presentation of that story. Same with the way they did it with Tim Cook. It's none of their business. It's nothing material to do with who these people are as business people. They were just doing it for the prurient juvenile hit that they would get from outing these people. So I get why Thiel is pissed off at them. But you're a public figure, dude. You got to expect to take some shots.
Be careful. Be careful who you go after. I guess.
Yeah.
It could be the next billionaire.
But then that brings up the next question: is that be careful who you go after kind of story? Is, as many people have said, this will have a chilling effect on journalism in general, and certainly maybe the tech.
No, come on.
Really? You don't think it will?
No, because I mean there's a big difference between, I think, what Gawker does and what journalism does.
Yes.
I mean, I don't read Gawker. I don't care much for it. I could care less what happens to them.
Yep.
Just because of the types of stories of, sex tapes and this person's gay and this, and here's what this, I don't care,
Yep.
So, if the National Enquirer went broke, would we care? No, not really. Some people would, but you'd pick up something else the next day. There'll be somebody else that follows in Gawker's footsteps.
True.
It's just the way that it is. I mean, now if this were the New York Times and it was a hard-hitting story, and they were being sued because they printed something that was, an investigative report.
Yep.
Then that's like if they printed an investigative report on, the NYPD or something, or bus service in, how the that's corrupt.
Yep.
Well, that's completely different than, this person is gay. I can understand how if somebody is personally attacked, that they would definitely have some revenge, if that's what you want to call it.
Oh, absolutely, and I agree with that. I'm a big fan of revenge. I like vengeance. It's actually fun, so I have no problem with that aspect of it. The problem I have is you say it's because of the story. So what if Gawker had done a expose of Thiel, that the expose turned out to be that Thiel was into something that was illegal or shady or morally repugnant? And then Thiel sued them into oblivion.
Well, then I think Thiel would have a lot less support than what he does.
I think that's the problem. I don't think we can pick and choose. We have, luckily for us, certainly in America more so than Canada, but certainly in the Western world, the theory of press freedom, and freedom of speech. That even the speech that we find objectionable still needs to be protected, because even protecting the objectionable speech protects the non-objectionable speech.
I agree completely, but we also have the freedom to hold the people accountable.
True.
And if Thiel is doing that, if he's holding them accountable for stories that they wrote, then we can't say, no, you can't do that because they wrote a story on about you. And again, going back to the New York Times, if the city of New York sued the New York Times because they wrote an investigative report on something that, uncovered corruption or something like that, they can't sue them for that. And if they did, how many people do you think would support the city as opposed to the newspaper?
Yep, that's right.
Because it's journalism, but this is, this is pretty dark, under the covers type of stuff.
Oh, I agree. It's definitely hard to defend Gawker in this one.
I just, maybe it's because I don't really care for the type of journalism it is, but it's not something I would read.
Yep.
It's not, if they had videos, it's not something that I would watch. I don't care.
Let's move on to something that we are interested in, even if we don't care. It was reported today that the reporter for 9 to 5 Mac, Mark Gurman, one of the world's most influential Apple reporters, and I don't think you can disagree with that statement, is moving on from 9 to 5 Mac, probably to a more traditional old media company. People are saying CNBC or Bloomberg or that kind of stuff.
No, it's already done. It's Bloomberg.
It's Bloomberg. Yes, that's what I had heard too. Yeah, exactly. I was leaving it out there until it was confirmed.
It is confirmed. Brad Stone confirmed it.
What are your thoughts on Mark Gurman leaving 9 to 5 and going to Bloomberg?
Good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, holy shit, the kid deserves it.
Yep.
And I can see why Bloomberg would want him. I mean, obviously, Bloomberg wants all the traffic and eyeballs that Gurman brought to 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And, that's what he'll do for them.
I'm surprised this hasn't happened long before this.
Well, probably not, because he was in college. He just graduated.
Yep.
Jesus. I mean, so I think the fact that he's going to Bloomberg is a good thing for him. It's a good thing for Bloomberg. I wouldn't doubt that he had multiple offers of places to go.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's going to have a good career.
It's going to be interesting to follow him in the next few years to see if what he does at Bloomberg is going to change in any way. Bloomberg is a much more broad company, although his beat will be to focus on Apple, pretty much doing the same thing he's doing now at 9 to 5, although his sources seem to have dried up a little bit over the last 6 months. He hasn't broken nearly as many of the so-called big stories as he has in the past.
I think that could have a lot to do with his final year of college, too.
True. Yeah, fair point.
Now that he's going full-time and he's going to be with Bloomberg, that's big stuff.
Yeah.
That's the big time. And in that type of situation, you either make it or break it.
Yeah.
But I think he'll do well.
Should Apple be worried about this?
Well, 9 to 5. He brought a lot of eyeballs to 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And people like Bloomberg often quoted Mark anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be a higher stage for Mark's writing for sure, and TV. So, will Apple be worried? Mark's going to do the same thing that he always did. He'll just have a bigger stage to do it with now.
Yeah, I don't think Apple is going to be worried per se. I think Apple would certainly like him to dry up and blow away, but that's just going to be the natural way of thinking about journalists who dig into your garbage pail, basically. But I don't think Apple's worried about it because nothing's going to change for the most part. He's going to have a bigger platform, but he had a pretty damn big platform at 9 to 5, and the platform doesn't matter to Mark. For him, it was breaking the stories.
It's not the platform itself. He did have a pretty big platform. I think it's the prestige of the platform.
Yeah.
9 to 5 was viewed as a rumor site. They would break the stories and break the rumors. But Bloomberg, they're a well-respected publication, and now they have Mark who can break stories and write all this stuff that, let's face it, they didn't have access to, and that's what they want. They want access to that. So it's like going from a podunk newspaper to the Wall Street Journal.
Sure. Yep.
Even though the newspaper the first newspaper might have had a great circulation and lots of people read it. And I don't want people to think that's what I mean by 9 to 5 Mac. I'm just trying to use an example here. And then you go to the Wall Street Journal. Well, they have a lot of people too, but it's the respectability of the publication, I think, that's, known worldwide, and they have TV stations, and they have all this stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I certainly think that, and Mark and I have had our battles over the years, happily so. I know he's enjoyed it as much as anybody else does. Mark doesn't shy away from a fight from anybody in the Macintosh community, and he has broken some stories. He's been wrong a lot, too. A lot of folks won't admit to that. But he's also been a lot more right than most other people in the Macintosh community. So I wish him the best at Bloomberg. A weird story that got posted on the Loop, among other places. Apple removes same-sex couple from its International Mother's Day ad. What do you think about this when you read this story?
I thought it was weird.
Yeah.
I did.
It doesn't seem to be copacetic with what we know of Apple, with what Apple has said in the past, with what Apple has portrayed themselves as saying. Now, the logic behind it is that maybe the marketing company is worried of the backlash of these kinds of representations in these particular countries, countries that may be more religious or had different viewpoints about this. But Apple, in the form of Tim Cook, has said in the past, we don't care what other people think about these sorts of things. So I think we're going to see something said later this week, early next week, where Apple is going to blame this on maybe an overzealous PR firm. Do you think?
I don't know.
No?
I really don't know what they could say, because ultimately Apple has control. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way out of this besides trying to let it die.
Yeah, true. That's something else I could use, just because it is typical. These kind of stories will blow over after a certain bit of time. But it was a bit disappointing for me to see Apple not buckle under the pressure, because there was no pressure, but for Apple, some aspect of Apple, to go back on the things that they've said in the past about LGBTQ relationships and the way they feel about them. I don't think Tim Cook himself is very happy about this story.
Well, I mean, with something like this, I think you either support it or you don't.
Yeah.
That seems clear, but we don't know all the ins and outs of this. So there could be other things at work here that we just don't know about.
Yeah.
But they seem pretty good to think that this is what they support. They've been very strong in their support of a lot of things.
Yep.
I mean, I would hate to see them go back on any of that support.
Yeah, you can't pick and choose on these kinds of issues. You can't say we're going to support gay rights in the United States but not in Turkey. We're going to support them in London but not in South Africa. You can't do it that way. You've got to do it all in or not at all.
Well, and here's where some of the difficulty comes, because in some countries it's actually still illegal, I believe.
Yep, it is.
So, I mean, you can't go in and break the law, so there are some extenuating circumstances where maybe it does make sense. And I don't know if that's a situation that they were in or not, but that's kind of where they are.
I think it was handled poorly, if only because if they knew going in this was going to be an issue, don't excise the gay couple out of the ad. Do a completely different ad. Have the ad look completely differently in those countries where this might be seen as offensive. Have one ad for North America, but maybe a completely different ad, because this was so obvious that they'd cut out the lesbian couple out of this ad.
Yeah. Well, maybe that was a better solution than what they did.
I'm sitting around waiting for Apple to hire me to fix these problems.
Well,
it's got to happen sooner or later.
You should make that known.
WWDC is coming up in under 2 weeks. As always, this is the big lead up to what rumors are true, what rumors aren't true. We're not going to talk about rumors per se. Let's talk about surprises. Apple has been accused, rightly or wrongly, in the last couple of years of being a fairly leaky boat. It's not as bad as back in the good old days of Mac Week magazine, which announced products that Apple hadn't even told us about. It used to, kids, you think Apple's leaky now? Dear God, it used to be a lot worse.
Oh, you could just, we used to joke that you could just call the switchboard and ask and they would tell you.
That's right.
It
used to be a lot worse than it is now, kids. So that's what us old-timers find very, very funny with this kind of stuff. But part of it is, and I don't know why some folks can't understand this, Apple's supply chain now is so huge. There's no way they can keep everything a secret anymore. We're seeing pictures of various components. And those aren't coming from Apple. That's coming from some third or fourth or fifth party supplier in Shanghai or Taiwan or any number of companies. That's where all of these rumors are coming from. Now, that being said, do you think we're going to see new hardware, new Macs announced at WWDC?
I think that WWDC is a good place for Mac hardware.
Yep.
We're certainly not going to see an iPhone or iPad or anything like that. But it is a good place for Mac hardware. They've done it before. They've done it with iPods, and they've done all kinds of different things. But mainly, the focus is going to be on OS 10 and iOS. That's what the focus is, and not just on the operating systems from a consumer standpoint, but the operating systems from the standpoint from developers for APIs. Here are the new things that we're unveiling for developers to build apps. You know, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And anything else that we get beyond that is gravy.
I think we'll see some revs of products. I don't know how major those revs will be, if only because I have been quite happy in the last couple of years of not paying attention to the vast majority of these rumors. I read the headlines, but I don't read the stories of the latest OLED panel on the next MacBook 12-inch. I don't care. I'll find out when Apple wants to tell me. I don't need to know beforehand. It's not my job to know beforehand, so I don't care. I'm going to be fairly surprised no matter what Apple announces in 2 weeks' time. I think we will see revs of hardware, but like you say, the majority of the announcements we're going to hear are about new versions of various operating systems. And for me, and hopefully for you, being there in San Francisco, the most fun part comes, having been to a couple of WWDCs, the most fun comes in after Apple makes the announcements, talking to various developers, say, hey, how are you going to make this work in your app?
Right.
Or what did you just see that makes you excited? That, to me, is a lot more fun and more interesting than sometimes even when Apple announces on stage.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, that's what a lot of it is about.
Yep.
Is, you know, what the developers show.
I haven't talked to him I haven't talked to him in a couple of years. But who's the guy from Black Pixel? Jim?
Just hold on a sec. Just a sec. Yeah. What about Black Pixel?
I can't believe that guy just asked you if you wanted a beer. Do you have one in your hand? Yes. Then no.
Yeah.
If you don't, yes.
Well, but I had one in my hand, and the answer was still yes.
That's right.
So.
The head guy over there at Black Pixel, Daniel David.
Daniel Pasco.
Yeah, Daniel. He was one of those guys that you always hunted down after a WWDC and said to him, what do you see in that? Because those guys see these things in a different way than we as consumers do. They understand more about what's going on at WWDC than I would. So those guys were the great ones to talk to after WWDC.
And you can tell during the WWDC keynote, and for those that watch it, you'll be able to see that Apple will announce this, Tascam 3.0 API that does, you put the flux capacitor in and it does all this stuff, and all the press people are sitting there like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's right.
And the developers are screaming and clapping and
woo. That's right.
And we just sit there looking at each other like, okay, I guess that meant something.
Yeah, pay attention to those cheers, folks. Pay attention to when the developers cheer, because those are the times that I would go to the developers after and goes, why'd you all cheer just then? What was that all about? I sat there one time with the Black Pixels guys after WWDC keynote at lunch, and they were vibrating with energy and excitement and just looking forward to what was going on. I had no clue what they were talking about. Literally zero clue what they were talking about. I sat there and I nodded in all the right places, but I didn't know what they were talking about. To this day, I couldn't explain to you what the hell those guys were talking about.
No, I have no idea.
I don't have a clue.
I won't understand most of the keynote.
That's right. And you know what? At least we're man enough to admit it.
Well, when Tim leaves the stage, then I stop understanding. When Craig comes up, I don't know what he says.
We'll get you.
I need a translator.
Yeah, for Federighi, yeah. We'll get you out on this note. I don't understand how companies keep doing this stupid shit. The latest one is Samsung thinks adding more ads to its smart TVs is a solid business idea.
Yeah.
Solid. What the hell is wrong with these people?
Well, they're obviously going down.
I don't understand how anybody at Samsung could say, hey, you know what? You know that TV we sold you 6 months ago? We're going to put even more advertisements on it than when you bought it. We're going to take over your TV.
Well, and that's why I have an LG.
Now, is your LG what's called a dumb piece of glass, or is it net connected?
It's net connected.
See, I will not allow my television set to be net connected.
Well,
I will not plug it in.
I don't mind. It doesn't have a camera.
Yep.
It doesn't have a microphone. It's net connected. I get the odd update, and that's it.
Yep. I don't want updates. I don't want anything. I want a dumb piece of glass.
As soon as I see an ad on there, goodbye.
That's right, exactly. But I just don't understand how a company could say to itself that we'll make money off of this, but not understand how much it's going to piss off your customers.
Well, at that point, they don't care.
That's true. But
once a company makes that decision, they don't care.
It's such a myopic way of thinking, because what they don't realize is you've now pissed that customer off. And when they go to buy a new TV in X number of years down the road, they're not going to buy another Samsung.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that depends on price too. Okay, well, we can put up with the ad, but look at the price.
Yeah, possibly. You're right. But nowadays the price of TVs is so close. I bought a Samsung 2 years ago, and the price of that Samsung was pretty much the same as a Toshiba, as an LG, as the other mid-range high-end TVs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's MacMan says, but once Samsung does it, how long before all the rest do it? The rest aren't nearly as aggressive as Samsung seems to be with this kind of technology, with what they can do internally to and with your television set. But like I said, for me, I just simply don't use the so-called smart features of my TV. If I want Netflix, I've got an Apple TV to do that with. I use iTunes. I use other set-top boxes. I just want my TV to be dumb glass and not have access to anything else other than...
Well, that's what I do too, for the most part. I use my Apple TV, but, I could unplug my TV from the internet and not really lose anything besides the update. So...
Folks, he's watching the hockey game, so we're going to let him go. Thanks very much to Jim Downpour, The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us here each and every Wednesday. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. What do you guys think? Do you have a smart TV? Do you want a smart TV? Do you use your TV smartly, I guess is the way I would describe it. Do you use the smart functionality on your television set? I don't even know if my Samsung has that stuff, because I know I didn't look for it to buy it. For me, what I cared about was picture quality and HDMI inputs. That's all that mattered. And price. What TV gave me the most HDMI inputs, the better picture quality at this price? And if the ad said, oh, it's got Netflix, don't care. Oh, you can plug in the internet, don't care. You can show pictures off of it, don't care. None of that stuff matters to me, because I don't want my TV to be smart. I want it to be, like I said, a dumb piece of glass, just sitting there being glass, showing me pictures. That's all I want my TV to do. Give me good sound and good picture, done. That's it. No more. I have other devices to provide that external content that I'd like to get, whether it be an Amazon TV. Oh, we didn't talk to Jim about Amazon. Shoot. Whether it be Apple TV or a Roku box or a Chromecast, whatever else. I'll get my additional content that way, not through my TV. MacMan says, I notice a lot of the new TVs now have 4 to 5 HDMI ports. Yeah, that's true. A lot of them do. We used to have to use HDMI boxes, breakout boxes, because there was only one input. Now, if your TV doesn't have at least 3, you're getting screwed. Scott Thrift says, the price difference between the dumb and smart version of my TV was about $300. Exactly the same TV, just added components. Yeah, and I don't need to spend money on a smart TV when it's never going to get used as a smart TV. So, email Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. Let me know if you have a smart TV, if you use the smart TV functionality of your television set, if you have such a thing, or if you care about such a thing. Like I said, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. whether or not my TV can do that stuff. I would prefer a TV that doesn't do that stuff. And if I had to buy a TV that had smart capabilities on it, I just wouldn't turn those capabilities on. I wouldn't connect my TV to the interweb. I wouldn't allow it to be connected to the internet. So that's the way it works here in the King household. In our starting point photography segment, I got this question from Bill Withers. Bill says, what should be the ISO, focus, shutter speed, and auto exposure to get a perfect photograph? It's a great question, Bill. It's a great question. What should be the ISO, the focus point, the shutter speed, and the auto exposure to get a perfect photograph? Bill, you're going to hate the answer to this question because it's an impossible question to answer. There's no such thing as to have all those settings for a perfect photograph. What photograph are you talking about? Are you talking about a portrait of just someone's face? Are you talking about pictures of a waterfall? Are you talking about pictures of a race car, of a bird, of a city skyline at night, during the day, mountains, lakes? Doesn't matter. There's no such thing as the perfect settings for every individual photograph. You could describe to me the photo. Doesn't matter. No one can tell you what the perfect settings are for a photo, where you could put it into that setting in your camera and get a perfect shot every single time. The closest you're going to come is auto mode on your camera. Let the camera figure out all those settings. You just point it at the thing that you want to take a picture of. But even then, with auto mode, I always call auto mode average mode. Auto mode tends to make everything average lighting, makes things look flat. The colors don't pop. It is not a very good photographic expression of the scene. Yes, you'll get the picture, but all it will be is a snapshot. It'll just be an image. It may not be very good. It probably won't be very good. What you need to do, and this is what I've always said for me, one of the reasons why I love photography, is photography satisfies both the creative aspect in my brain, seeing things I want to capture, seeing the beauty and the ugly and the horror and the funny and the interesting around me, and capturing that, and the technical aspect of how to capture that. What is the ISO, the focus, the shutter speed, the exposure, the aperture, in order to capture that creative aspect? And the two go hand in hand. You don't have to know everything about one or the other. As I've often said, you can be the most creative person in the world and still take good photographs knowing technically nothing about your camera. You can be the most technically perfect person in the world, but have no creative bone in your body and still be able to take pictures. But the more both sides of those aspects of you can work together, the more you can see light, that's the creative aspect, the more you know about the technical aspects of how your camera works, the better your photographs will become, and more consistently. Everyone can take, out of 1,000 photos, everyone can take, if we have a scene and you take 1,000 pictures, you'll get at least one good photo. Even if you're Stevie Wonder, you'll get one good photo. When you become a photographer, when you want to be a photographer, you want to be able to recreate that, and you want to be able to get more than one out of 1,000. You want to be able to get a bunch of good images. And that's when you have to know about creative and technical. Wayne says if there were such settings, it would be the camera's only option. Exactly. It would be a Polaroid camera that we saw when we were kids. You pushed the button and you waved it in the air, and that took your picture. There was no focus in those cameras. There was no ISO or aperture or any of that kind of stuff. It was just a point and shoot camera. You pointed, you shot. So don't think about what are the perfect settings for every single image. Think about what are the settings for this image. How do I capture this image I'm seeing in my mind's eye? And if you don't know what those settings are, now you need to learn what you don't know. You need to learn if you take a picture and it's blurry, why is it blurry? Is it blurry because my camera was shaking? How do I stop the camera from shaking? Well, you can put it on a tripod. You can increase the shutter speed. Oh, what's shutter speed? Well, shutter speed defines blur. The higher your shutter speed, the less blur. Oh, so I'll just increase my shutter speed. But when you increase the shutter speed, the image gets really dark. All right, what do I do now? Well, now you need to blend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it sounds like there's a lot of things to do, and there is. I'm not going to lie to you. It can get very complicated. But like everything else, practice, practice, practice. When you practice this stuff, it becomes very automatic. And I don't mean once every 8 months when you're on vacation, you take your camera with you and you take pictures. No, you're not going to be a good photographer in that situation. It's not going to happen. You may get lucky and take one of good shots, but you're not a photographer. What you need to do is learn these things and practice them. Just like if you were a sports player in junior high school or high school, you didn't go out and play varsity basketball or football or baseball. You practiced. You were 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 years old practicing playing baseball. When we played basketball as a kid in the summertime in Nova Scotia, we would play for 9 hours a day. We'd be up and out of the house at 8 o'clock in the morning. We would play basketball until sundown, until the streetlights came on, the proverbial streetlights came on. If we were lucky, someone would come along and bring us lunch. Someone's mom would make a whole bunch of sandwiches and bring us sandwiches. And you had water. That was it. And it wasn't a Gatorade or crap like that. You had water and sandwiches. That was it. And so then when you got to junior high school and high school, you were good at playing basketball. At least if you were one of those guys. You were a good basketball player because you had practiced for 10,000 hours beforehand. Same with photography. You can't expect to pick up a camera and expect that camera to take good pictures for you. It's a tool. You got to learn how to use the tool. Just like you learned how to use a hammer, just like you learned how to use knitting needles, just like you learned how to use a frying pan. A camera is a tool you need to learn how to use. Don't expect it to be easy. It's not. It's simply I can't explain it any other way. It's not easy to consistently take and create good photographs. It takes learning, and whether you learn through the manual, through a book, through a class, through a video, through YouTube, through asking questions of other, however you learn personally, you have to learn, you have to focus on being a photographer, you have to practice being a photographer. If you don't do those things, you will not take good images on a consistent basis. So hopefully, Bill, that helps answer that question. It's a good question because it shows that folks have this misconception of photography, of what can happen if they get a good camera. If I get a good camera, I can take great pictures. Not necessarily. If you get a good camera, you can take better pictures. But if you're shooting crappy pictures before, you're going to shoot slightly less crappy pictures with a better camera. Shawn A. Kruger sends me an email about iPhone HDR photos. Just a note about your comment a week or two back about the iPhone camera's HDR feature. I don't remember your exact wording, but you said something to the effect of the iPhone not doing a real multi-exposure HDR, but rather faking it in software. To the best of my knowledge, he says, this is not true. Apple used to have a page on their website talking about HDR, but I can't find it now. But the camera does actually take 3 photos in rapid succession, one regular, one overexposed for shadow detail, and one underexposed for highlight, and combines them in software. The reason I'm sure this is still the case is that if you take an HDR photo of a fast-moving subject, you'll often see weird artifacts in the combined HDR image where the software makes a bad decision on which parts to stitch together. You'll get an arm or a leg that takes an odd zigzag, for example. This can also happen with the camera movement or hand shake, but the digital optical stabilization does a pretty good job of eliminating that variable. I'm attaching a photo of my daughter Annalise on a carousel in the normal and HDR versions from my iPhone 6s. Let's see if I can't spot these. Oh my God. Shawn, that is just painfully cute. Y'all going to see this picture. Here's a picture of Annalise. Oh, hey, hello. Did I lose audio? There we go. There's a picture of Annalise. That's so cute. Also be careful about your advice about turning off the set and keep normal photo. Sometimes I prefer the original to the HDR. Particularly portraits can sometimes get a flat, unpleasing look to the skin tones. As a general rule, I almost always prefer the HDR image on landscape shots, but for people pics, it's probably 60-40. Oh, in the fine print under the settings, it says HDR blends the best part. That's more evidence to being real HDR. The only difference is that they ever give you the option to keep the over-underexposed images. You can't combine them manually or with specialized HDR software. Shawn Kruger, thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for the picture of the very cute Annalise. That's just, what was this? So, Scott Thrift, so small humans are either always cute or horrendous. There's never a middle ground. I don't think small humans are ever horrendous. And Annalise is a sweetie. Rob Studer, we talked about mirrorless cameras last week. He says there's nothing inherent in mirrorless cameras that excludes using a full-frame sensor. The only thing that mirrorless cameras can't have are through-the-lens viewfinders. He's right, and there are a few full-frame sensor mirrorless cameras, but in general, mirrorless is also thought of as being smaller cameras, more compact, not compact cameras, but more compact than the full-frame DSLRs. But there are several full-frame mirrorless cameras out there. Thanks so much for your camera questions, folks. I love getting the questions from you guys. As always, send questions to me anytime you'd like to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com for questions during the show. Or if you have questions during the week, more than happy to take those questions from you at Shawn@yourmaclifeshow.com. Scott Thrift, who is in the Telegram room, says, important issue for all device owners. This article just popped up in my news feed. Something important you should cover. Why you don't have to give your smartphone to police at a crime scene. Well, the problem with this, Scott, and I agree with you, it is an important issue. The problem is because we are an international show with an international audience, I'm wary about giving legal advice. This particular one is Canadian. Well, you don't have to give your smartphone to police at a crime scene. You got to find out what the rules, laws, and obligations are in your jurisdiction. And it might be different from not only country to country, but state to state or province to province. The problem is, I tried to find this information out, and the local Vancouver Police Department, their spokesperson said, I can't tell you what the laws are. Go read them. What do you go read them? Like, all of them? It's like, could you at least point me to the photography laws? No. Well, thanks. That's a big help. Thank you very much. That's wonderfully helpful of you. In general, depending on the situation, you don't, if you're filming an officer in pursuance of his duties and not interfering with him, in general, even if they ask, you don't have to give your smartphone to the police. They can say, oh, that's evidence. I need to take it from you. They need a court to order that. The problem is, how willing is the average person to refuse a order, command, directive from the police? Me? I got no problem with it. What are they going to do, arrest me? No big deal. I've been arrested before. It's not that big a deal. So it depends on how much pushback you're willing to give to the officer. But in general, yeah, you don't have to do what the cop says if you are not interfering with him. interfere with them, then you have problems. Scott Thrift says, law enforcement always refuse to tell you your rights, etc. Here in New South Wales, Australian police cannot stop you from filming as long as you are not hindering them, but it's a huge issue. Same with the U.S. and Canada, especially in the U.S., Scott. It is an issue. Another Australian, Jason Painter, writes, here in Australia, hang on, let me get this. Here we go. In Sydney, we welcomed the first Apple stores with open arms. The resellers were not in the CBD. I don't know what CBD is, Jason. They often didn't have product, and they didn't have a Genius bar. Third parties have pretty much all folded, and it's no loss. Don't blame the Apple Store for this. They went bad before it came along. 15 years ago, I think resellers were much better. They were pretty reliable to get stuff from and helpful. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Jason, but the Apple stores did kill off a lot of bad resellers. There's no doubt about that. Sears should never have been selling Apple products. Okay? It should not have been. Our local Sears stores had Macs next to lawnmowers. Okay? Sears should never have been selling those stores. And sure, there are plenty of Apple authorized resellers that should not have been selling Apple stuff. The problem is Apple threw out the baby with the bathwater and killed a lot of good Apple resellers. Drove them out of business intentionally. There was an Apple reseller here in Vancouver I worked for in mid-1990s when the iMac came out. Late 1990s. He literally could not sell you an iMac because he lost money on it. The way Apple had structured his business, every iMac he sold, he lost $25. Apple wouldn't let him raise the price, wouldn't let him lower the price, wouldn't let him do a bunch of different things. If you bought another Mac, he made money. But if you bought an iMac, he lost money. That's just goofy. That is just goofy. Paul Jones writes, why does Siri need to be connected for non-internet requests? This was a big bone of contention and confusion for a lot of folks when Siri first came out, that you would ask Siri a question, and if you weren't on the internet, Siri couldn't answer. Siri, what's 2 plus 2? I'm not connected to the internet. I can't answer you that. What? It's a math question. Well, the thing is, what people don't realize is the processing power on the iPhone maybe isn't, powerful enough to do voice translation. What Siri needs to do, and it does it amazingly fast, is it takes your query, sends your voice to a supercomputer somewhere else. The supercomputer translates that information, sends it back to your phone. So Siri knows what you said. That's why it needs a persistent internet connection, because it needs to translate your voice, and your iPhone isn't powerful enough to be able to do it directly on the phone. Reading the stuff in the Telegram room. Scott Thrift says, I agree with Jason. I worked for Apple resellers in the 90s, and the whole situation was a mess. Mosquito says, I wish there was more room for good resellers like TechServe to continue doing retail sales. And Scott follows up, we have some decent resellers here now, but they did so much damage to the brand. We had one full recently, and it's come out they were selling gray market and secondhand goods as new. We don't know the story behind that, Scott. Maybe they were doing it to stay in business. Remember, Apple has screwed these guys. Apple has prevented a lot of them from selling products. You talk to any reseller in the past 10 years, and they'll tell you that Apple will release a new MacBook, and they can't get it in their stores for months on end. And yet, they're at the Apple Store. That's not fair. The problem with it is the resellers, the supplier of the product is also their biggest competition. And Apple favors its own stores over its resellers. And it's not like they're giving out stuff at the exact same time. Apple stores will get product, more of it, and faster and sooner than the resellers. So if I go into my local Mac Station store and say, hey, well, I want to buy the new MacBook Pro from you guys. We don't have any in stock. We can order it for you. All right. I go to my local Apple store. Yes, sir. Here's your new MacBook Pro. That's not fair to the reseller. That's not fair. So it forces that reseller to do other things, and maybe it forces the reseller to do gray market stuff. I don't know the story behind it, but I've heard that before. Mosquito says stores like TechServe and the one Peter Cohen works at in Massachusetts had to learn how to offer services that the Apple stores wouldn't. True, but they were forced to do that. It wasn't through their own choice. It wasn't through their own want to do that kind of business. Some of these guys don't want to work business sales. They like the customer stuff. They enjoy it. And all of a sudden Apple comes along and says, no. We're taking, all those customers you used to have, we're taking them all. Go find other customers. Oh, and by the way, we're going to compete with you guys for those other customers too. That's not fair. They say, Apple says, well, you can always do the business customers. Okay. So you go find a business and they want to buy 100 Macintoshes. And I know this story to be true. You find the business, they want to buy 100 laptops. You go to your Apple rep and say, I want 100 laptops. What's the best price you can give me? And the Apple rep says, here's the price. Guy goes back to the customer and says, here's the price for the 100 laptops. Ooh, I can get a better price from Apple. What do you mean you can get a better price from Apple? Well, I just got a phone call from an Apple rep who said he'll sell me 100 laptops for a lower price. I'm sorry, what's the name of this rep? And it'll be the same guy that the store talked to. Apple is poaching the sales of the smaller guys. They can't compete with Apple when Apple is also their supplier. It's an unlevel playing field. Always has been. Always has been. Robert Studer also reminds us about the gateway stores we talked about last week. I seem to remember that in gateway stores, you couldn't actually walk out with a computer the same day you first walked in. You ordered one with the specs you wanted, and it was assembled and shipped to you, either to you or to the store. A lot of folks forget that about Gateway. A lot of folks forget that the Gateway stores were big, pretty stores, and you could walk in and sit down at a computer and play with that version of Windows. And you say to the sales guy, this guy, I want this one. Yes, sir. What size hard drive? What size? How much RAM? What size screen? Fantastic. That'll be 2 to 3 weeks. And you go, what? That'll be 2 to 3 weeks. But the computer's right here. Gateway tried to save space, money, and inventory. I think they were based out of Texas, by having all of their computers in Texas and not in the store. And so when the customer ordered it, they would just ship it from Texas. It was an interesting business choice that they made. I don't know if it was a good choice, but it was certainly an interesting one, shall we say? I'm sorry, I'm going to say your name wrong. Pete Sultan. Pete says, how do I reach Apple with my product to see if they're interested? Pete, guess what? You have to go work for Apple. There is no way that you can get Apple interested in your product off the street. Apple will not accept any pitches. They will not accept anything proverbial thrown over the transom. You can't send an email to Tim Cook at apple.com or feedback@apple.com. Apple will not accept any suggestions, ideas for products, anything through those avenues. Because what happens is Apple could take your idea, not like it, tell you they don't like it, and then 3 years down the road, someone else at Apple could invent the idea on their own, and then you would sue them. The only way you can get Apple interested in your product is if Apple comes to you with the product. You cannot pitch Apple. If you try to pitch Apple, most Apple employees, if you're just talking to your buddies, you know someone at Apple, like I do. I mean, the people I know at Apple are all worker bees. They're just employees. But if you happen to pitch Phil Schiller an idea, Schiller would literally stop you in the middle of the conversation and go, please, sir, stop. Do not tell me your idea. I can't do anything about it. I don't want to hear your idea. And it's not because they think they're perfect. It's just because there's been so many lawsuits. Companies have been sued so many times that they don't accept ideas from other people. They utterly can't do it. You got any more emails from folks? Let's see. Nope, looks like that's it. Folks, that's it. We're done. Oh, wanted to remind folks, Sly wasn't here tonight because Sly's one of her kitty cats, Ty, passed away this morning. The only good news was that Sly was there when Ty passed. It would have been awful for poor Ty to have no one there when he passed away, and it sure as hell would have been awful for Sly to come home after work and have Ty be passed away. So send a thought out to Sly. She's not doing great. She's not feeling well to begin with, and I know she's feeling awful now losing her kitty cat. So if you want to send an email to her, it's sly@yourmaclifeshow.com. She's on Facebook if you follow her on Facebook, or if you want to send her a Twitter message, she's at SlyM. That's SLYM. I know she's sad right now, and I know she'd love to hear from you folks if you want to send Sly a little condolence message that she lost her kitty cat, Ty. Logan says, is the show ending? Yes, you're late. It's a short one today, Logan. We didn't have let's see if there's anything else we got on my list of things to talk about. Nope, that was it. I'm done. Unless you all got something more to talk about, I'm done. I'm finished. Folks, want to say thanks as always to our good friend Jim Downpour, the Loop at loopinsight.com for being here each and every week, even though he doesn't have to be. And to you guys for being tuned into the show, whether you tune in live or tune into the archive. I greatly appreciate you guys being tuned into the show. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you're listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!